Javier, I don't want to brag, but I saw that coming. I did not think Randy Orton was going to sincerely apologize to Matt Cardona. If I was in the crowd, I would have been warning Matt. Actually, I probably wouldn't have been. But I would have seen it coming. You just can't trust this. You can't trust Randy. I mean, I know he seemed believable, Javier, but and I don't want to brag. Again, I don't want to brag, but in this case, I saw through Randy. I knew he wasn't actually going to sincerely apologize. How about you? How surprised were you?
Pretty much like on a scale of like 1 to 10, probably like, I don't know, like 0, somewhere around there.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm going to sound down, but I'm fine with it. But it's just I'm jaded. I've seen the story like 100 with Randy Orton like 100 times. So,
yeah.
So, it almost everything in this, it was great. I really liked the episode, but everything felt like it was just, what was coming if you're familiar with the product. So, that's pretty much my question would be, my only question and the only like intrigue is if they're trying to tell the story where he really was sincere because maybe like his wife called him, told him, hey, apologize right now. And then decided not to. That would be the only intrigue with that. But you knew that just for the story that they were telling that he would have to, take out Cardona.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that Matt Cardona's the most sympathetic babyface for a lot of the crowd. I mean, just taking out Cardona is essentially Randy Orton turning back babyface to more than a handful of fans. And Randy saying, calling him a nerd and making fun of him being, go play with action figures or whatever. Obviously, some people are going to take offense to it. Cardona has a following, but there's another group of people who look at Cardona and kind of see him differently and might be, the people who cheer Randy are going to keep cheering him even against Cardona. So
I think that they would have cheered just about if he had done it to almost anybody on the roster. I think there are only very small amount of people that they wouldn't. I mean, there still would have been cheers from part of the crowd, but you probably would have gotten more of a 50-50. You wouldn't have gotten like a face turn kind of sound.
Well, people just aren't into booing Randy Orton, and we see that. I mean, so I guess on a serious note, like, was it worth the journey for Randy, even if you saw it coming? And I mean, obviously, you'd be crazy not to go, okay, Randy's a good actor, or we're to believe he's not acting, but ultimately he'll succumb to his ultimate instincts to just not be forgiving or apologetic is a better way to put it. Was it worth the journey, or did it come across as sort of like, it was so predictable and in the end kind of pointless to do it? I mean, I think it was worth the journey. I'll just tip my hand. I think it was fine. I don't think knowing the ending or suspecting the ending disqualifies it from being worth doing. But I could imagine some people just feeling like, did they really expect us to believe that? Of course, Randy's not going to apologize sincerely.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on like what level you're watching. If you're like engaged with it, then you go through it. But at this point, like the majority of the people who are really like both there because of the price of the tickets, they're more willing to open their wallets if they're big fans. You've already seen this kind of stuff, so that's there's been a conversation you guys have been having on the Fix for a bit, where people are seeing it from like a higher level and a more distant level, and they're more critiquing what's going on. Mm-hmm. And in that respect, which I mean, granted, this is the way I do because I've watched so much wrestling. That's kind of like how I consume the product. So just looking at like what they did, I have no problem with it. I think it was they did a good job, but I think when you're booking for wrestling, you also have to keep in mind the internet fan, the one that knows, because they're going to, you don't want to do something like, with a character like Randy Orton where everybody just wants to cheer him anyway. So I think I think that's something you'd rather you should take into account. They didn't, but despite them not doing it, they're telling a good story.
And I think there's a difference between being a savvy, longtime fan who's read all the books, internet, listened to all the podcasts, who watches really in that way, and saying, well, they need to that what they did here was only foreseeable to those fans. Like, to me, there are things like that. There's just tropes that are repeated. There's things that are set up to be a surprise for the sake of the surprise, even at the expense of logic. This just feels like a different category. This is even the most casual of fans. I shouldn't say the most, but even people who simply watch the product, don't study it, don't critique it, they just kind of go along for the ride. I think they were smart to this also. I mean, they know it's Randy's, Randy can seem believable, but they're going to be like, I don't know, Matt Cardona. I wouldn't trust this guy. Cody, if he shakes Cardona's hand, don't let your guard down next week. I just think everybody is in on it. And again, even at that level, I'm fine with it. But I don't think by doing this that they were not taking into account, so-called internet fans. I think they were taking them into account, going, this will be fun. You see what's coming? Randy's going to trick a gullible Matt Cardona, perhaps, or, Matt will be on edge a little bit, but maybe he'll leave himself vulnerable, which is what happened. And it'll be fun to see Orton do that. The problem is, ultimately, where is the heel heat for Randy, and did tonight help that? Like Jade Cargill said, I don't need this title. I don't need this ring. I'm just here to make money because I was a star before I came here, and I'm going to be a star without this title, without this ring. I'm just here for money. That's a heel promo. Randy doing vintage Randy stuff, and like that speech to the crowd. I mean, there's aspects of what he said that were sort of on the journey to being heel, but it wasn't really a true good faith all-out attempt to get the fans to turn on him. It was just simply Randy explaining his character, which the fans already have baked in, and they like him for it. And I think the testament to that is, he wasn't heavily booed when he came out. He wasn't heavily booed when he left. There were little murmurs of it. But when he took out Cardona, fans said, one more time. That's the mindset of even just it wasn't just a few scattered fans of the crowd. It was the preeminent attitude within that arena among ticket buying fans in Raleigh is one more time. Fans have been, and this is a lot of policies and a lot of booking habits coming home to roost right now that Paul Levesque's been part of, and the whole industry's been part of, which is it's a participatory communal experience to chant things and be a smartass. And you have announcers who have said, AEW, Shivani just did it this week, praising, or maybe it was last week, but praising heels for doing what they do because you do what you got to do. WWE's been saying that forever. I think it's sort of a mindset that extends beyond wrestling for a lot of people in power in WWE, which is just take what you can get regardless of the morality or empathy or anything like that. And it comes through in the booking, and now the booking has lost its teeth when you actually try to get somebody to turn heel, and you have to be super, super specific in how you try to get boos. And the way to do it is to actually not do what Randy did, which is, I felt empty when kids smiled when I signed when I signed an autograph for him. Well, that's a feature, not a flaw of Randy. It's when Jade goes, I was a star before I got here, and I'll be a star after. There, you're telling fans, I don't need WWE. I don't need the fans. I am a star. And fans go, no, you're not. You're a star because of WWE, not before it. And so I just don't see that permeating the product consistently, Javier, where I don't think they're fully cognizant or tooled to combat what they have created when it comes to actually trying to create a foundation where people can get over as a heel when the goal is. And then, people like Cody who end up being the victim of it.
Yeah, and that's why I was, for longest time, I've been, when we brought up Randy Orton turning heel for the program, that I was like, I don't like that idea, because this is exactly what you're going to end up getting is, a situation like this. Now, if they had taken out, say, Jey Uso or LA Knight or Sami Zayn's involved in his own thing, but imagine that Sami Zayn weren't. Like Sami Zayn, that kind of thing, then you might have gotten more because they're more beloved. There are people who like Matt Cardona, but he hasn't, in the actual WWE ecosystem, hasn't been really made sympathetic. We've only seen him a handful of times, hasn't really done anything. So they did tell you on commentary, but you would only know the impact of that if you knew that Cody and Cardona were best friends. So, the relationship between them, that would be the only reason, you take out Cardona is because the link. But if your only experience with that is commentary telling you, oh yeah, they're really good friends behind the scenes, it doesn't really hit you the same way. So I think that's another, maybe they thought that it would, but it didn't. It's one of those where they expect you to know more about their relationship, where it feels meaningful than where you have to kind of like come in with the work that was done outside of the actual story on TV.
What would WWE have to do or have done, maybe it's too late, to get Randy truly boot? Because beating up Cody just feels like a wrestling angle. And, like, I mean, even like, Jelly Roll coming out and going, "Oh man, Randy, I respect you so much, but you went the wrong direction. You went too far. You crossed the line." He's like talking to him respectfully. What Randy did last week was borderline criminal. And when you do this over the top beatdown, not over the top to the degree of some stuff that we see in other realms, especially AW, but in WWE's narrative, that was a really vicious beatdown. And, they had Angel and Alberto kind of like shun Randy for it a little bit, like they're intimidated, but they're just like, we don't approve of it. They're trying to send that message. But like, do you talk reason to somebody who did that last week? I mean, I know they needed to do it for the story they were telling, but they want to be able to do the brutal beatdown, but then they want to tell a more nuanced story as if, well, that's forgivable with just a few words. And it's like, if Randy had just kicked Cody in the crotch and then walked away, okay. This week you can have Jelly Roll go, "Man, why'd you have to do that?" But when it was when it went further than that, in the next chapter is he's going to apologize, and a sensible, level-headed person, as Jelly Roll is portrayed, is just going to treat him like a person who can be reasoned with, and an apology will undo it. Like, that's incongruent. That's WWE wanting the brutality of a beatdown angle, a turn, but then they want to tell a more nuanced story the next week, and they don't match enough. But that is based on an internal belief, which has been hammered home over and over to the point where it needs correcting over time, which is, well, fans don't take it seriously anyway, so we have to give them the visual of something violent, but we know they won't take it seriously, but they'll enjoy it ephemerally. But, just be this in the moment, whoa, that was a brutal beatdown. But that's not actually the story we're telling. It's, it's similar argument that I said, although it's not as bad as what AW did with like the suffocation angle, where it's like, or kidnapping and leaving someone in the desert. Like, there's just things that are done where it's like, it's so outside the bounds that you can't just go, "Oh, come through the metal detector next week and welcome, and we'll give you promo time." Certain things should cross a line where that doesn't happen, and WWE doesn't. I don't think it even crosses their mind to tell a story with certain tiers of actions that lead to a completely different tone or a different even ability to show up the next week for work. Like what Randy did should have. I don't know. Was it brutal enough, or am I overstating it, that should have been, don't even come around next week, and Cody has to say, "No, I want him. I need to get my hands on him." Because to me, that's kind of, I think this crosses into that territory, which would be the babyface begging the GM to let the heel back.
Yeah, I mean, it's just pretty much on the same level. I just saw it in I didn't see it last week, so I actually seen it in replays. So I didn't see it like completely paced out. Yeah, but yeah, it was similar to what the stuff that Drew McIntyre had been doing, and Drew McIntyre got suspended or at least they attempted to kick him out of the building, from time to time. So. Yeah, I mean, it would make more sense that there would have been more pushback, based on what he did outside of the commentary team, just repeatedly saying, "Oh, this is horrible, this is awful," and and overall, I think this is the commentary stuff was the thing that will bug me more, because it felt like they're trying to sell me too hard on Randy's actions. Like, they feel like the audience isn't buying it, and we really want you to boo. We don't want a 50-50, and we don't want the one more time chance, because they hit it pretty hard. Yeah. And on the Jelly Roll thing, like, overall, I like I like what Jelly Roll said. If he were talking about someone who was an alcoholic who fell off the wagon. That kind of felt like more on those lines, because I could understand, like, oh yeah, I robbed a liquor store, and like, okay, you felt you made a mistake and stuff like that. But last week he nearly killed a guy, so yeah. We're talking about a little bit more. I get what they're trying to do, and they're trying to make that that link in your mind, so. And it might work for some people, because, like, I'm like, okay, well, I'm obviously watching a TV show. I'm not watching something that's supposed to be simulated real life at that point. So, which on a personal level, it's fine. It's fine by me. But yeah, if you're trying to get the more this is real life. It kind of like it felt like Jelly Roll was like too quick to say, hey, yeah, it's okay what you did. Just apologize.
And I think people resign themselves to the notion, I think you just did to a degree, well, I'm okay with it not being realistic because I watch it anyway, I enjoy it, I don't need that. And like, do you realize, I mean you generally, like people who are like, oh, it's just wrestling, how much better it would be for you who know better? Obviously, I mean, everybody knows, but it's just scripted television. It's live action scripted television. It would be so much better if it resonated in your brain in a way that matched the reaction to things matched what happened. Like if there was more of an effort to be made consistently. I feel like so many people are throwing their hands up and going, there's nothing we can do about it. It's like looking up at a leaky roof and going, well, it's been leaking for, couple weeks now. I guess roofs just leak. We'll just live with it. Like you can actually do something about it. You don't have to just give up on the notion of having a universe that where things are to scale and reactions to things match. And I fight that resignation, on a lot of things that, when things are just dumb for so long, people just think, well, that's just the way it has to be now. Things just have to be dumb. Nashville Diaz in the chat's part of it. The old school role of face and heel doesn't really exist anymore. People cheer who they like. The old school roles of face versus heel don't really exist anymore. People cheer for who they want to boo. They cheer for who they want and boo who they want. It's up to the promoters to align the people who get cheered in the babyface role and put people who are going to be booed in the heel, put people who are going to be booed in the heel role and who are going to be cheered in the face role, and then build on that and do so consistently. This notion that there's no way we can control who's going to get cheered or booed is ridiculous. Of course you can, and they do it half the time. But then half the time they don't, and they think they're reinventing something, and they're super special because they're thinking in a modern way outside the box as opposed to just being indiscriminately sloppy and undisciplined and not cognizant of the world they created and how to fight it. And it just makes everything harder. And I will point to, ticket sales and, a number of metrics that are down. I mean, there's so many things with ticket sales that are blamed. Vegas twice, the economy, the price of tickets, all that. A lot of things are at play, but my plea to all wrestling fans is don't give up on the notion that it can be better than this, and you can get people consistently united behind baby faces and cheering them. That might mean don't turn Randy or don't try to turn Randy, but it also might mean sometimes you're going to turn someone and it's a challenge, but you find out a way to make it work. And part of that takes a year or two or three of, as you said, Javier, getting the announcer credibility to a point where they don't look like they're hard selling you on something to make you feel a certain way, but they're simply reacting to how you're feeling. They're underlining, emphasizing, amplifying the natural emotions that the audience is already feeling instead of trying to strong-arm you into feeling something that you're not feeling because WWE's taught you. It's just this communal experience where we chant one more time, and it doesn't matter. You're not actually having that peak fan experience rooting for Sami Zayn to win in Montreal. And I think they should strive for that, and it can be done, but I don't think they're sophisticated enough or cognizant enough to do it in the state of mind that they approach their booking and their writing and their scripting on a week-to-week basis right now. They need to jar themselves into a better place.
Well, and the other way is also because I mean I guess you could pull back on that and just be about styles and matchups and stuff. Where you're more interested in seeing. I want to see what this big guy does against this small guy, and once you know what the personality of the people are involved too. Because that was like that's pretty much how I enjoyed New Japan. It wasn't. They kind of had almost like a tier. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I'm talking about like several years ago. They had like a tier thing where like, you had the guys that always were by the book, some that were kind of like, cool, but sometimes cheated, but it was more about like who was wrestling who, as opposed to telling you giving you an angle, telling you a story. One of the problems, because like I also analyze a lot of the culture stuff, like games and movies and stuff, is it's hard to really do a really good villain nowadays because in a lot of media you don't have bad guys anymore. You basically have a guy who does, or a girl that does bad things, but they give you all this stuff to make you sympathetic to them, so you feel bad for them, you understand why they're doing it. When they do someone who's really truly vile, because there's so much entertainment out there right now, and you have a character that's really vile, you just change the channel. You don't stick around with it. I think you guys might have touched upon it a little bit on the fix. People won't stick around with it because you have other options that are more palatable, that are softer, and won't get you to really hate the person involved. And I think that's also part of what goes into it, because you could have, I think MJF was one of the ones that actually was about as unsympathetic, but at the same time entertaining enough for people to stick around. I think it's like a very narrow, for heels, I think it's a very narrow lane for them, because if you're too, you need to be entertaining enough for people to stay with you and see what your heelish actions are going to be. If you're not entertaining enough, people are going to change the channel. And if you're too entertaining, you're babyface. And I think that they just, bookers have just resigned. I'm like, okay, we're just going to tell this, and people are just not going to be engaged. And I think that's another part of the problem.
I totally get what you're saying. I think that is manageable. I think that you can be entertaining, but if you know your audience and you have established a structure, rules of engagement, an honor, a system of honor, for lack of a better word, an honor system in terms of what we're here for, what tactics okay and what's not. It's like fighting in the NHL. You like to see fights, but there's an honor system. And often guys hug or shake hands right after the fight's over, even though they're trying to punch each other. There's a certain, okay, you hit one of the star players from behind with a check into the boards. The ref didn't see it. It's my obligation to now drop the gloves and try to bloody your nose. But you're not trying to drive his head into the ice and give him a concussion. Like, there's rules of engagement, and it's accepted within the sport, and fans react to it. Wrestling thinks, well, it's what I always say about booking, like a fourth grader goes, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? There's too much of that in wrestling. You need an adult to go, there's a bunch of things we could do, but we're smarter than that, because we're not trying to be entertaining. We're trying to be effective. And effective booking is way more entertaining than making your first goal being entertaining. And so I think Jade was an effective heel tonight because she wasn't trying to entertain people, but it made the segment on a whole entertaining because you were rallying behind Rhea, who is cast correctly as a babyface. Jade is tall, muscular, and looks like she was born to be a star and didn't have to work for it. And they're playing into that. Everybody can relate to that. Jade Cargill was a star before she got here. She has a big head. Nobody in the back likes her, and we resent the hell out of her having a championship because we want a person that we respect, who worked hard for it and appreciates the fans and appreciates the sport, to represent it. Thus, we want Rhea to take it. That's entertaining. Stop having, the goal shouldn't be for wrestlers to be entertaining or a segment to be entertaining. The entertainment is a side effect of an effectively told story between a babyface who fans naturally are inclined to root for, and you amplify why, and a heel who fans are naturally inclined to boo because of their backstory and how they carry themselves and what they say. I just don't think this is that hard. But Paul Levesque, who's as old school as me, in terms of having seen the territory system and some of the great promoters who knew this, just because a bunch of bad promoters made bad decisions the last 25 years while the world changed, doesn't mean that pro wrestling had to change as much as it has away from fundamentals that I think are timeless. Even if you have LED boards and better lighting and fancier moves, you still fundamentally should have the result that entertainment is a side effect of a well-told pro wrestling story, instead of the first goal being, we better be entertaining, because then it goes to what you're saying, which is heels are entertaining and people cheer entertainment. But you have to have the whole system set up. I know when I interviewed Bill Watts, when he was kind of lobbying to be the WCW VP, when Jim Hurd and the booking committee was doing a terrible job, and he was saying, wait, if I could just get 10, 15 minutes with Ted Turner, 5 minutes with Ted Turner, I could come up with a concept that would just completely revolutionize wrestling. And he did an inept job and focused on bad things and got kind of selfish with an incentive when he cut contracts and got, tried to intimidate people out of keeping their guaranteed contracts. So he was a mess. But fundamentally, that is kind of, for that era, what he was going for. This is like 35 years ago, but he wanted to get back to some of the fundamentals so that when there was a structure in place that would make it that would make an effective segment entertaining, rather than trying to be entertaining and hoping that was effective. So this has been an ongoing battle for more than 3 decades with people who I think understand the easiest way to accomplish what you want in wrestling, which is to have an engaged crowd while you sell tickets, People have lost their way, and there's been a lot of bad bookers who have lost their way over these decades. And I'm just fighting the tide to just accept it as the new normal because, hey, that's old school and it's not, as opposed to it's the timeless right thing to do. If somebody just started creating books with pages that fell out and invisible ink that nobody wanted whatever, no one would go, well, that just has to be the way it is. They go, no, let's go back to how books were 40 years ago when the pages had black ink on white pages and the pages stayed in place. Like, there's just some fundamental, basic, standard things that we've lost our way on, and we shouldn't just resign ourselves to, well, that has to be the way it is. And some of what we see, well, a lot of what we see with WWE these days, and frankly everywhere, is that. Javier, any thoughts?
Yes. Oh, well, I was going to bring up more, but I don't know if you introduced the show yet.
No, we got to that. I
mean, because it's funny because everything we're talking about that, yet at the same time, Sami Zayn is actually touching on that because Sami Zayn is talking about how Randy Orton is, just did what he did, and he's like, and he's kind of rewarded for it, and Cody, who's done everything the right way and everything by the book and everything, and he's the one who got hurt. And he's questioning, like, am I doing it the right way? What's the point of doing things the right way if Cody, who does things the right way, gets hurt and Randy Orton gets ahead? So they're even working that into the Sami Zayn storyline. So that's something else,
And ultimately, Sami should not succeed because he cheats and beats the system. One of the good things about Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis is you have babyface GMs with the best interest in mind of the fans. So many people lost their way so much. I mean, pro wrestling structurally, as it's presented, should be, we're here to find out who the best pro wrestler is. And yes, we're it's all fiction. It's all scripted and it's not an actual competition, but we're going to present it in a way, in every facet, as if everybody on TV, from opening to closing credits in canon, their goal is to show who the best wrestler is. And if somebody tries to get ahead through means other than proving they're the best in the ring, there should be a structure in place fighting it. And sometimes that structure doesn't succeed, or it falters, or you don't want sheer incompetence, but sometimes you need heels to outwit or something to get ahead. But you don't want ultimately Sami Zayn to have the most success in his career by cheating. I mean, like, if that story is told, fans are going to think, well, WWE's taught me, in order to succeed, because WWE's structure, their management, their rule enforcement mechanisms are so hapless that cheaters are going to succeed. So you'd be a fool not to cheat. But WWE has control over that. They shouldn't let the machinations of enforcement of rules be so inept that Sami sees a whole world around him that validates that point of view. Fans should look at him and go, no, that won't work for you. You're looking at things in a certain way that doesn't take into account the whole picture. But instead, Sami's points resonate because WWE has this inept machinations of enforcing rules that over time fans nod along and go, yeah, you'd be a fool not to cheat. And then frankly in life, there's some people who feel that way. And when they gain power, if there aren't counter mechanisms in place, that turns out to be true too, but then societies break down.
Well, I mean, what you're talking about when I worked as a manager, it's the 50% that you have to worry about, because 25% of people are never going to steal, 25% of people are always going to steal, and it's that 50% that if the opportunity arises, they might. So that's kind of like the where the focus should be. And if you don't have the rules, then guess what? That 50% becomes the people who are going to cheat.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, roughly speaking, yes. All right. As you reminded me, let's pause and formally introduce. We do this at the 20 and 30 minute mark, not just the 10 minute mark, pretty regularly now. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show on Friday, March 20th, 2026. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter, the website PWTorch.com, and the host of the Wade Keller podcast and post shows. The Wade Keller podcast is podcast only. It is our blue logo show. Search Wade Keller in Apple Podcasts, Android, wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, and subscribe to that for free. That includes our flagship. It includes pay-per-view preview episodes, media Q&As, classic interviews, and flashbacks and more. Our red logo show is our post-show format, which you're part of one way or the other here. Most of you are listening to us on the podcast side of things on demand. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Some of you are watching us live on YouTube, and we live stream our post shows now on YouTube. So just search PWTorch on YouTube, subscribe, and join us live if you can. It doesn't work for most of your schedules, and that's why we have a podcast also. So download the shows when you see the red logo pop up, subscribe to that. I am joined today by Javier Machado. He is a longtime PWTorch contributor and podcaster. He writes WWE pay-per-view previews for PWTorch.com. I hope you're all checking that out on a regular basis. We had our news on Toni Storm up earlier today with an implicit and explicit correction on the fact that on reports that she's injured, and that's why she's going to miss the rest of the year. You can check out details on that on the website, along with a lot of other great content. Really smart writing, a great variety of voices, different fans, different writers with different histories as fans and different perspectives, but all with kind of that Torch sensibility, as opposed to what you find just littered all over the place with randos online in the social media sphere, or some of the SEO-driven sites and gasp AI-written articles, which are just so obviously so sometimes. So please check out PWTorch.com every day, see what we've got up there. We've got news, articles, flashbacks, live coverage, and more, including my live reports on Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. And it is in those reports that you can find a link that'll allow you to be a video caller if you want to join us live and be on the show as a video caller, or you can turn your camera off and just do a call-in audio-wise, just like our Blog Talk Radio days. The other way you can participate in the show if you don't watch us live is by email, wadekellerpostshow@gmail.com. wadekellerpostshow@gmail.com. If you have a topic suggestion, a question, a rant, or whatever to be part of our live stream, that is the email. Otherwise, you can join us in the chat. We have a live chat on our YouTube channel, and it's a great environment, and they really add to the show, and we're going to throw some of those comments up on the screen, and of course, I'll read them to our podcast audience as we go here, including reactions to what we had to say in the opening half hour of the show. Javier, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Wade.
Great to have you. I think I covered all the main business we need to cover. So let's just get to what I just said, some of those reader comments on our prior discussion. We do have a super chat from Derek Mitchell. Super chats get priority. You're all welcome to do super chats, of course. Derek Mitchell says, thank you, Derek, by the way, very much. The last 3 WrestleManias, Cody has been in these brutal situations heading into Mania to build sympathy and raise the stakes by the final boss heading into WrestleMania 40, Cena and Travis Scott after Elimination Chamber, and last week with Randy. It is a pattern with Cody. Is that working against us, Javier? That it does feel a little bit like, well, we'll just have Cody get beat up by a heel, and that's what we do every season. Should they have said, when looking at the lay of the land, let's do something different here? And I would advocate, going back to the 30-minute block A that we did on this, I would advocate for doing less, not more, because I think doing the same thing year after year, especially, and there's just so much brutality, and that it feels desperate, flailing, that, well, nothing is working, so we'll just make things more violent. And I think if you pull back and you have more finesse with the reactions to things, and structurally there's more consequences to things that are less brutal than what we're seeing, I think then it would feel original and fresh and ultimately be more effective. And I think what Derek brings up is one of the issues. We just keep seeing this with Cody, and it's just sort of, oh, that's the way WWE tells their stories. And people don't get emotionally invested. They just see it sort of as detached observers of what WWE does this season.
Yeah, I would have preferred like just a slower breakdown in the relationship, as opposed to Cody just saying, I mean, a part of me liked it in terms of, like, it was funny, not effective in what you want to, sell WrestleMania. So, but the fact that Cody says, I want the Viper, and then, like, okay, yeah, cool, and then he signs.
And Randy calls him out
signing. Well, I mean, the moment he finished signing, he just slams on the head. It's like, okay, I'm the Viper now. Like if he flipped the switch. I found it hilarious, but I don't think that's the effect that you want. But yeah, I do think that the just going for, I don't want to totally set my heart on it, make a decision on it until I find what Cody's reaction is next week. See how he
That's
returns, because it might, because if it could just be that he shows up and starts trying to kill Randy, and then you basically do what they did with McIntyre and Jacob. At that point, you're not really building a story. You're just putting a lot of explosion on screen to keep the audience entertained as opposed to building something.
And that's why I like Jade and Rhea better than what they did with Randy and Cody, because it's simpler, but it's more effective. And I think when there's not this flailing of, well, we just need to step up the violence and the stunts and the blood and the beatdowns and make them longer and have even more security people who the wrestler gets pushed away from and then pushes through to further the attack, you just get numb to it. But what you don't get numb to is a heel going, I don't care about this title, except that it makes me money. I don't care about this ring, except it makes me money, because I'll be a star no matter what. That gets fans emotionally going, beat that bitch. Like that's what they're gonna think. And I just see when I watch the things that don't feel like they're flailing desperation, amping things up, that you just end up numb to, but you tap into what wrestling fans care about. And what wrestling fans care about is that the baby faces are respectful of kind of the old Gunther gimmick, but in a babyface way, the sacred ring and this sport. And wrestling fans are passionate about wrestling being a big part of their pop culture, sports, entertainment, however you want to phrase it, life. And a heel saying that that can work in 1972 also. Like this isn't some modern social media era thing where you're adjusting. A wrestler going, I'm just here for the money. That's going to get fans mad every time, especially when you have a babyface like Rhea talking about how long she wanted this and how hard she's worked for it. So there didn't have to be violence or blood for that. And I think that emotion resonates longer than somebody being bloodied in a sport that everybody knows is fake. What's not fake is tapping into that resentment to somebody who says, I'm a star no matter what, I'm just here for the money. So yeah, I would say dial it back and find more nuanced ways to tell stories. It's one of the things that's great about Sammy right now, even though, yes, you take an element of it that is sort of symptomatic of a larger issue, and we'll see how they navigate it. I don't know. I mean, Sammy talking every week is more compelling than broken windshields and pull-aparts, I think, because that I just think you get numb to, because then the fans just go, one more time. They don't take it seriously. When they if you're doing it to get people to take it seriously, and they're clearly not, step back and go, let's start doing something different. This doesn't work anymore. If Randy's supposed to be a heel because he stomped somebody and the fans chant one more time, you should have an emergency meeting and go, okay, there are things we're doing out of habit that if we just think for a few seconds about it, the intent of us doing it is not for the fans chant one more time. We're not trying to entertain them in a way where nothing really lands or sinks in or resonates in a way that sells tickets. We're just getting these ephemeral pops. Let's figure out how to do this. It might take us a while, but let's start doing the right thing, and eventually we'll hit the reset button on people being numb to this stuff. But part of it is having the wisdom to go, can we really turn Randy Orton heel? Is it really sensible at this point? Especially because I just think people at this stage like the babyface Randy more than the heel character that he's playing. Although it's more believable for him that he would do it, it's more of a feature than a flaw that he's doing it. And as you said, Javier, Randy threw it back in Cody's face. You asked for this. Like, that's a baby face. Cody, you gave me permission to be this. Like, you're just wiping away any anger fans have towards Randy when fans are like, even fans who are mad at Randy are like, he's kind of right. Cody did ask for this. And that's where what you're saying too. We got, a few more weeks to go here to tell new chapters of the story. And maybe Cody can I don't want to use the term salvage because it sounds like they've made mistakes, but get them to the place that they want to go more than it looks like they have a good chance as of what happened this week.
It's funny because Randy's one of the wrestlers that could slip me in with his promos, and I'm listening to his promo of explaining himself, and I'm like, I'm on board with you. Yeah. I know what you did was horrible, but but like he said, I want the bad guy version of you, and I'm like, okay. I mean, and if you want, and he explained himself. He's like, I didn't like the very like trite. Oh, I don't really care about the fans. I hate. I'm tired of that in promos when there's a heel turn. I was always pretending. Come on.
Well, he didn't say he was pretending. He said it made him feel empty, and I actually see that as a nuanced difference. He wasn't pretending to do it. He did it sincerely, but at the core, it wasn't satisfying.
Yeah,
you can do something sincerely and have it not be satisfying, and that's kind of what he's saying is, I apologize, but I am wired to even when I sincerely do something that other people get satisfaction over, I sincerely do it and I feel empty. I'm okay. I'm okay with that at this stage.
Yeah, okay, a fair point. But when that even makes it even worse, because that's even more compelling reason to understand his perspective, and you're like,
know.
okay, well, now, like, what I would do is then have Cody just come back. I'm like, you beat my ass the other day. That's what I wanted, and come at me, and then have their moment. Where he owns, don't make it seem like it was a mistake he made, that, pushing the Viper button, oops, I pressed the Viper button, I didn't mean to, own up that this is, that he didn't want he wanted his best because he didn't want Randy Orton to feel, that he beats a lesser version of Randy Orton. It's very similar to the story that they told with Kevin Owens and Cody, where Cody, called out Kevin Owens for not having the killer instinct.
Mm-hmm.
So, which if they do if they follow this up with the Sami Zayn part of it, because Sami Zayn's basically saying, hey, people are saying I don't have the killer instinct, and the people who have been showing it have been the ones who've been successful. Do I need to start doing what Randy Orton's doing? There might be a bigger story in play that might be interesting to see how things shake out, but which is why I'm like, we're critiquing it, and I'm, despite the fact that I really like the episode, but obviously, we do it to get the best out of it. But yeah,
being entertained by an episode does not mean it is effective for the ultimate goal of what this show's purpose was.
Yeah,
and I think people need to separate those two things. Well, you don't have to enjoy the show. You shouldn't. The average fan shouldn't be worried about how much money WWE makes or how many tickets they sell. Just be entertained by SmackDown. But on this show, and the Torch approach for decades has been what's best for business. And I always say the Authority co-opted the term. I'd used it for a long, long time. Paul Levesque read our stuff for years. Turned that into a thing. But and I wasn't the only one saying it, but like it's been co-opted into some sort of like gimmicky heel line. But it's literally what is best for business. That's the lens through which we analyze things. Sometimes entertaining shows are entertaining in a way that's not best for business going forward. Other entertaining shows are best for business going forward. There's two categories of entertaining shows, and there's no harm and no guilt anyone should feel for sitting back and watching a 3-hour SmackDown, being entertained by it, because there were enough elements that were good. But when it's done, was it really good? There's, who was, why am I drawing a blank? He was a former Chicago Bulls, Knicks, and Wolves coach. Someone in the chat tell me. And he would have great regular season records and have really entertaining games, but his players were all burned out because he played so few players, the most minutes they could possibly handle in the regular season, and then when the playoffs came, they just fall apart because other teams were fresher. Thibodeau. So
it's funny. I actually knew who you were talking about. I forgot his name.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, good. So he would drive the star players, so the games were entertaining, but it was in a way that was ultimately counterproductive. And so I would just use that analogy. Tom Thibodeau. Thank you, chat. You can have an entertaining show that's counterproductive. You can have an entertaining game and you win, and it's counterproductive to winning a championship. And that, I would argue, is a lot of what goes into booking. They just live hand to mouth, week to week. Oh, we need ratings. We need crowd pops and, whatever. We need social. The worst thing is social media buzz. Oh, we need the most views possible. So we're going to do this thing that we can put a 10 or 20, 30 second snippet up, and it'll get so many views. And that's dictating what they do when trying to sell tickets and have a crescendo on the things that actually draw money and are most important. Like, I mean, the priorities are just screwed up. And so, but you can have a good show, but it can also be a show that isn't as productive as it could have been, or as it ought to have been. Okay, I want to go to a comment from Derek Hubbard regarding Cody next week, Javier, and you brought up, if Cody fights fire with fire, I think he can garner enough fan support that the fans will not reject him against Randy. Cody cannot be squeaky clean like he was against Cena. I do have trust with, obviously issues I have with what they did this week. I think what they did this week is, in a way, the only thing they can do with the structure that they have created over the years. But there's no better start as soon as you can, just deciding, can we be more effective by actually becoming self-aware of the things that are causing us to have to do what we do in order to get any kind of reaction. What do you think of that, though, fighting fire with fire next week?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I was implying,
Yeah.
or saying, or stating, or whatever word I was
Well,
using there.
but can he get enough? Can Cody end up with a majority of cheers? Or, I mean, sometimes they're going to cheer whatever's entertaining. And that's a fault of WWE and wrestling promoters for creating a mindset for fans where they think that's what they're there to do. Call for tables, one more time, fight forever. This is awesome. As opposed to, if they're told a story that is emotionally gripping, they're not thinking about the stunt scenes. They're caring about the characters and the outcomes and the stakes. But I think there is still room for Cody to take what Randy has done and go, yeah, as for the Viper. And I got it. I took a beating. But thankfully, that beating wasn't a day before, 2 days before a match. I have time to recover. I'm going to be recovered. I'm coming for you. And or I played you. You know, like if Cody comes out next, maybe there's something I haven't thought it through, but maybe Cody can make a compelling case that he actually played Randy. That the Randy that he has brought back is a Randy who will be his own worst enemy. And I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, they've got something in mind and it'll all fall into place. But it doesn't change the fact that Randy should have been booed this week if the company had a structure in place and knew how to tell stories where they would get a heel to get booed. That has nothing to do with Cody turning this into a way for him to get cheered next week. It's a separate issue, but there's still room for Cody to do that and win people over.
Yeah. It's something. I don't. To your question, I don't think he's going to be able to get like 100% of the audience on his side. Yeah. So I think it might end up being best case scenario you're looking at is he does something cool and people cheer him for that, and then Randy does something cool and people cheer him for that, and then it ends up being kind of like a back and forth, and you get people like engaged in terms of like on a superficial level, not on the story level, and hope because that's pretty much the best you could hope for.
You could go back 9 months and say Cody's going to face a heel, and we are going to meticulously every week make sure that heel or that babyface who's going to turn heel, we have something in place where when we enact the heel turn or announce the match of heel face, we have positioned fans, we have manipulated and masterfully come up with a situation where we're going to get the reaction we want. And you can plant seeds patiently and deliberately over the course of months and months and months and have it pay off where fans are like, they react to whatever that big moment is in your story in the month or two leading up to the match, and you just trigger everybody into booing the heel. But that's not what happened here. Obviously, they're flailing and changing things and trying to make things work. Let me read a few more comments, and we can talk about some other things from the show also. Although this, far and away, I've covered the Jade Rhea thing too. Far and away the biggest thing on the show, but there's certainly other things. All right. Derek Mitchell says, I wasn't a fan of Randy feeling conflicted most of the show. Jelly Roll telling Randy he can make it right and he should apologize to Cardona, which I've said you can't trust a Viper. I guess we've talked a little bit about what did you think of how Jelly Roll executed what he was asked to do, separate from the other critique, which is it even reasonable for Jelly Roll to think a few words of apology makes up for the heinous acts of Randy last week? But he was asked to do that. Did he do an effective job with what he was asked to do?
Yeah, I think he did a very good job with that. I have to give a lot of benefit of the doubt for the level of what he did and Jelly Roll being cool with it. But he came with hey, you're he really. I think he couldn't have done a better job appealing to Randy's better nature, and right. I think that was effective in making you think that hey, maybe he actually might apologize. If I didn't have the history of Randy Orton for where he always fakes out, he always does the fake out thing. If I didn't have that experience, I would have bought hey, maybe. On two levels, I might have said, oh, maybe he, that was his wife on his phone and told him to apologize. Or that they're trying to get the smarter fan to think that, okay, maybe we went too far and people are still cheering Randy, so we're going to pull back a little bit on the heel turn. So, because I was actually thinking about that at that moment, I'm like, are they actually going to pull back?
Yeah,
I mean,
I was.
Yeah. So
I was snarky and sarcastic to start the show, but I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's a legitimate, like, not, you shouldn't be ashamed if you're just like, maybe they're calling an audible here, or, going a little different out.
Yeah. So to pull back a little bit on it, I'd be more. I think part of the whole he's conflicted thing is so they could just turn him babyface after the feud is over.
Yeah.
Because because what they're trying to what it seems to me that the story they're trying to tell is that the voices in his head are the bad guys.
Right.
Randy
that's the thing. Yep.
Yeah. So
and in a way, Cody's a bad guy because he's the one who like asked for what he's getting.
Who woke up the voices.
Yeah.
So so that's so I think that's kind of what they're going, because I mean it kind of felt obvious the moment, like I said, he signed the thing, switched over, and threw him into slammed Cody's head into the desk. So that was like, okay, so he's just going to be playing the role of Viper from now to WrestleMania, and then because Cody said, like, as soon as the bell rings at the end of WrestleMania, I'm still going to love you. And that's something that's likely how the story is going to end, that the match is going to end. They're going to shake hands, and, Cody will be like, hey, I got the guy I wanted, all's forgiven. And, we move on with our lives.
Yeah. I think if their goal wasn't to have Randy be so hardcore heel, bashing him in the head with the ringside steps where he's bleeding and the announcer's going, he's unglued, and it's appalling. If it had been more measured and it just felt like a betrayal of a moment, I just think everything this week works better. If all Randy did is snap enough, and the RKO's kind of turned into like this, Danhausen curse, or the stunner when Steve Austin was giving it to, women. Like, it was just like, it's just a thing we do. It's not really, it doesn't really have, it's like a Roadrunner Coyote skit where they fall off the cliff and then next scene they're fine. And when you're 6, you're like, wait, this doesn't make sense. I did. I'm like, wait, how is he fine? He just ran off a cliff. It's in this world. Even then, I wanted there to be some semblance of logic to it. And
explains a lot.
Yes, for sure. Yep. But your little snarky giggle there about me as a 6-year-old, I will still argue. I'm an adult who would intellectualize it enough to say, you know what? If it isn't best for business to care about that, I won't harp on it. But I do believe what I'm saying is a structure that's best for business and leads to a peak fan experience. And it's not just like a pet peeve. Like I said last week, stop saying some of these things are pet peeves, when pet peeve is by definition something that doesn't matter. It just matters to you, but it doesn't really affect anything. But it just kind of, annoys you. I'm trying to make a much larger structural issue about how wrestling can be more successful by having things make more sense. And the scale of the attack last week was such that what their plans were for this week, assuming it was, all planned out, it's out of scale. It doesn't make sense. You'll be like, well, yeah, I mean, you almost give Cody a concussion, almost kill him with ringside steps. And it was, as the announcers put it, heinous, and he was appalling and unglued. But maybe an apology is what you need. Like, do something that you can apologize for the week before, and do it in a way that doesn't feel like, well, we're trying to be entertaining more than we're trying to tell a story that will make sense week to week. Sadler version 3 says, like I expected, Orton doing his job well, but fans not going to buy a heel turn from him at this point in his career. He'll be heavily cheered over Cody. Well, they got work to do. Maybe not. But yeah, Real Legend says there's few people that people will choose over Randy. Mark Biscotti says Randy playing the I'm conflicted character all night seems like a pure Phil TV time thing. There is an element to that. Like, how much of this, if we step back for a second and look at what Mark is saying, is what they did this week, we got a week to fill, or is this an essential part of the story they're telling? I don't think we can answer that until we see what they do the next 2-3 weeks.
No, I think like this is what I said. It's just setting up the babyface turn after WrestleMania, because you can't. It was always a hard. I still have a hard time with the reconciling the cheering Randy Orton as a babyface after his Legend Killer run, where he was punting retired wrestlers in the head and likely almost ending their lives. So he was a really nasty heel back in the day, which is doing stuff that it's pretty hard to come back from.
Yeah.
I think, and I know you love this one, Wade. I think that they want to eat their cake and have it too. They want to revisit the Legend Killer era, the Viper era of Randy Orton, and still be able to turn him babyface on a a snap of the fingers. Since he's nearing the end of his career, and give that version of Randy one last run.
And I think there's a way to do that. I think you can have Randy turn babyface afterwards, but still have them booing him in the meantime, and have the fans go, our booing of Randy is going to be part of what causes him to see the light when he comes up short at WrestleMania, and he goes back to the Randy that we've really fallen in love with over the past, X number of months and years, where he has reached a different stage of his career, where he's not any kind of, you get to a point where it's like you're so believable as this guy who's grown out of that stage that if you snap and go back into it, it should be framed as a phase, as a temporary setback, and the fan should be rooting for you not to stomp him one more time, but to snap out of it and go back to the guy we love. But WWE hasn't set up a structure where people take it seriously enough to care in that way. Everything is just ephemeral pops to be entertained, as opposed to buying into the world they create. Derek didn't buy into it. Derek Mitchell says, just my opinion, but I didn't find anything Randy did tonight entertaining or compelling, and it was totally transparent what was going on, particularly with no Cody Rhodes tonight. Pile Driver Pete says, live crowds will always be bloodthirsty. They want tables, and they don't care who goes through them. That's, again, I think that's more of a defeatist attitude. I think you can get a modern-day audience to be against but again, you have to, it's going to take a while, and you have to do everything right. Announce the tone of the announcers, the authority figures reacting to it, the selling. You have to pick the right people to be baby faces and the right people to be heels. They can all have that banned phrase as part of their characters. Baby faces can have shades of gray, heels can have shades of gray, but there shouldn't be a non-baby face heel who you say is a non-baby face or heel just because of some whatever you think shades of gray means, which it doesn't mean anything other than you want nuanced characters who aren't simple. But ultimately, a heel should be a heel, even if there's shades of gray, and a babyface should be a babyface. And then crowds won't be bloodthirsty. They'll get wrapped up in it, just like they got wrapped up in the Sami Zayn story in Montreal or Jey Uso beating Gunther. There are examples of this absolutely working. Cody's story, it can be done. It's just there's this defeatist attitude that I think Pile Driver Pete is echoing here, which is, fans just want to see spots. It's like, no, that's what they fall back on when the storytelling isn't compelling and they don't believe in the characters because the story isn't told well. Then they just go for the ephemeral sugar rush of a big bump. But that's not a peak fan experience. And I don't think promoters or fans should resign themselves to that. JC Scooby says, Hunter is clueless as Vince was, as clueless as Vince was at the end. Mr. Freshman says, just more underwhelming storytelling by Levesque's team. JC Scooby says, Cody should have turned on Randy. That would have been more compelling. Do you agree with that, by the way, just looking at where we are now? Again, the caveat being, maybe we're going to love this, and maybe this will all fall into place really well, even if it maybe wasn't done perfectly or ideally, or they just made the best of the culture they've created within the fan experience. But do you think ultimately we're going to look back and go, yeah, Cody should have been the one to turn heel? Not with our eye on the long term, because there might be a very compelling reason they want to keep Cody face, and they think this is the second best option in the short run because of something much bigger they have planned later, and I want to account for that. But in the short run, between now and Mania, would Cody as a heel have been better?
I think the best case scenario would have I think the best case scenario would just have him be babyface. After that, Randy Orton heel, but not to the level that they did.
Yep.
Where
I get that.
And then Cody heel would be the last one, because I think you could probably have done it in the 5 what would have been 5-week build. You could have probably done it if people really started turning against Cody, and if you felt it that it was happening, and just turn Cody like right before WrestleMania or at WrestleMania. Because at that point the crowd is sending you messages. I think that I would have gone babyface if the crowd really starts turning on Cody in a way where it's like, damaging him and they just want to see him, gone, then turn him heel.
I love that I gave you two choices, and I mean this, and you came up with 5 options instead. There's they stay faces, or it's less heinous Randy. I mean, there's definitely other things they could do. It's not just an either or. And I think that's smart to present it that way. JC Scooby, by the way, just says, I'd rather have Cody as a heel and LA Knight as a babyface for Mania for the title. That would take Randy and Drew out of the main event picture here. I mean, they could have. I mean, they still can, by the way. I mean, that might happen someday.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Could be an interesting story with LA Knight, because since LA Knight's kind of, he's just been there, you know, and like in doing important stuff, but like, you know, I think they could tell a really good story between the two of them.
Yeah, and LA Knight, I mean, kind of being on the sideline a little bit, just not being immersed in the top mix, but remaining popular and to a degree protected, can make him a valuable player in a Cody turn, perhaps eventually. All right. JC Scooby says WWE is really delusional, thinking fans were going to boo an RKO. Mr. Freshman says, I don't understand why the Kratom team or anyone else thinks this heel turn will work. The crowd, Powder of Pieces, crowd didn't want to play along. Randy was begging for boos and none were given. Yeah, I don't know if he was begging for boos or just trying to tell a story where boos would have been nice, but it wasn't deemed essential. But I would argue against that, you know, as generally speaking. I mean, obviously I say it all the time. I mean, like Punk and Reigns, it's two monumental stars facing each other face to face. Do it. You know, you can argue whether they're going to be damaged from how much they're tearing each other apart, you know, in certain ways, and some missteps with on Nikki's Club, the VIP exclusive show with Nick Barbatti, that went up this week. You know, he's talking about, you know, CM Punk is old and he should be okay with being called that. Like, it's not endearing to just snap because, you know, someone tells you with all your gray hair and you're in your late 40s, then you're old. Like, it's not really true to Punk's character. So, but nevertheless, face and face, there is a time and place for it. But mostly, you should have the power based on the work you do to tell a really compelling face heel story and make it work. Derek Hubbard's glad of one thing. I'm glad that Randy did not give the "it's the fans' fault" promo. Actually, he gave the "it's Cody's fault" promo. Randy gave a reason that is consistent with his character. Randy might not get booed, but the fans will not be apathetic. Yeah, I mean, the cliche of blaming the fans, I don't know how that could have been pulled off without an eye roll if it got pitched.
That actually might have been why I was negative on that. I never felt anything for the fans thing because I was expecting that to be the next line, you know.
And again, and maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I'm giving too much credit here. I don't think Randy said I never cared about the fans. I think he said I gave a sincere effort to caring, and it left me feeling empty. That's different than faking it. I think he tried to be sincere. It's like, I'm trying to think of an analogy.
Yeah, I mean, your framing of it was correct. The way it was. It's just that I was like so burned on that argument that I kind of felt like it was going, and also the way he phrased it was he kind of like waited to the end to mention it, because he went in and he spent a lot of time talking about, like, you know, you guys sing my song and you guys, you know, cheer for me when I go up and all this stuff, but you know, and it's wonderful that you did it, and it's great that you did it, but like it left you feeling empty, you know. So because they buried that part of it until later to, you know, give more oomph to the segment. So
yeah, I guess my analogy I thought of is some people can sincerely try to become religious, and it's sincere, but in the end they went to church every Sunday, they did the right thing, but whatever, you know, their that religion is, and they just felt empty. It wasn't for them. And they came to that conclusion. They gave it a shot. It was sincere, but it didn't work. I think that's almost what Randy was telling us, is he tried to find religion when it came to being a good, and he realized, I don't want to do harm to fans. Like, I was in a state where I didn't want to, you know, just beat up little kids or anything, but it left me feeling empty. I didn't get the same feeling that others did from it. There's people who don't get joy. Like, I read about people who don't get joy out of music. Like, their brain, there's just something about the brain. It's just, it sucks, but they don't understand why people enjoy music. They give a sincere effort to it. It doesn't do anything for them, and they listen to audiobooks or, you know, whatever. Randy might be that person when it comes to, you know, good deeds. It's just, it's not He's not wired for it. He's admitting it. He's confessing it. And I think that can be a compelling story, but I also think there's a way for him to be kind of shaken out of it and go, I think you're telling yourself that, but that's not true. But we'll see. I think there's something kind of like with the Sammy story. There's a long-term good story they can tell with Randy like this. All right. A few more chat comments on this, and then we will move to other topics. Let's see. Well, just Kavanti Small says it's clear Orton is not a heel. We'll see how this all lands. Sadler Vision 3 says, I actually liked the Jelly Roll promo to Orton. It came across as worried, concerned guy, and it didn't sound scripted as hell, like the Bellas. I think Jelly Roll's good at this. I mean, we covered it earlier. I think maybe this comment got me to ask you the question, and I didn't give Sadler credit for it, but I think Jelly Roll did good with what he was asked to do, and it did seem like someone who sincerely liked Randy and wanted to try to steer him back to a good spot, but I just think the angle last week was too harsh for that to seem as believable as it would have if it was less.
Well, it could also be like he's putting on blinders towards that because he's that close of a friend that he wants to pretend that, it wasn't what it was, because like there's some people that like, a spouse does something like horrific and you can't, reconcile what they've done. So
I guess Jelly Roll did well with what he's asked to do. I wish he was asked to go up to Randy and be like, Randy, no, never mind. What you did last week, it's too much. You're unsalvageable, whatever. And then go, no, wait, I'm going to give this a try. Because I do think deep down, like just have a moment of acknowledging that what he's asking him to do does feel ridiculous given what he did. And he realizes it, but he's going to try anyway. Just some sort of owning that out of proportion action by Randy last week, simply being Jelly Roll thinking, well, I can be reasonable and ask you to apologize, and Cody will be fine with it, and Matt will be fine with it. I guess what he did Matt Cardona probably, an apology is enough, but what he did to Cody probably wouldn't have been, would be my take. But if they scale back what he did to Cody, I still think it could have been really effective. And then this story this week would have made sense. And then Randy can amp it up later. Let's see. All right. Sadler adds, I agree for the most part, people cheer who they want to cheer nowadays, but I blame fans more than booking in most cases. One of the things I loved about early AEW is fans booed heels and cheered faces. And then Sadler goes, I wish fans played their part and cheered for faces and booed heels to help the atmosphere of the shows. I get where Sadler's coming from, and I do think ultimately fans would enjoy the shows more if they were in a crowd that was cheering faces and booing heels. I think if you're in alignment with the story that's being told, and there's not just all these incongruencies and contradictions, it's a better experience. But I disagree with Sadler, Javier, in that it's the fans' fault for reacting like they're not part of a cast. They're not cast members who are there to do a job. It's up to the promoters, the bookers, and the wrestlers to establish the right, likable baby faces, unlikable heels, and a structure that rewards, a level of doing the right thing paying off instead of seeming like a fool for doing the right thing. And then I just think that then the crowd response comes naturally. Yes, you'll have pockets of fans who are rebellious and try to draw attention to themselves, and those I'd be critical of. But I don't think when you have the majority of fans in a building with a bunch of casual fans, families, kids, their reactions are incongruent with the intent of the promo or the match or the story they're telling. That's not on the fans. They're not all being rebellious smarks. Javier.
The one I look at, which was really interesting, the way the fans reacted was with Roman Reigns during the height of the Bloodline storyline. Because when Roman Reigns would come out, once the storyline was established, people would cheer when the music started. And they would cheer him to the ring. And then once he got in the ring and he started, and they would do the acknowledging thing. But then when the story started, and he started talking to the rest of the bloodline, and that's when they started booing him. So like him coming out they were cheering because they're like, okay, we're cheering the performance. This is the actress coming out, and we're going to give him applause. And then they became invested in the actual story. I think that also happens with MJF because people know that what MJF was saying isn't real, but they were along for the ride because he was so effective in it. So I think there's a little bit to it, but not like it's totally like the up to the fans, because what you have to do is actually give the fans something to engage with, which the Bloodline story did, and what MJF does with his character.
I think Don Callis's just subwoofer malfunction entrance theme, just gives fans nothing to communally cheer in the opposite of Seth Rollins, who's, I still want to get the communal experience, but then I want everyone to flip their emotions and sincerely boo me. And I mean, it's a philosophy. I disagree with it. I think it's hard to sell tickets. I think you have to go much more hardcore with violence and table spots and all that in order to keep people entertained when they're not buying into the structure of everything. But Don Callis' entrance theme, you can do. Shinsuke, they changed the beat and the rhythm of it. With Trick Williams, I think they should change that too. John Moxley changed the music he came out to when he, I mean, there's a lot of flaws, I think, in the execution of what he's doing, just sort of fatal flaws in the structure of it. But he changed his music when the goal was to get booed. So I would just say, take away that, if you're really serious about Randy being booed, you got to take away the things that people like about him, or tell a sophisticated, different story than what I'm calling for, but do it so damn well that you still get the reaction you're looking for. What you don't want, what I don't respect, is a crowd that's entertained, but their reactions are incongruent with the intent of what they're doing.
It's funny you brought up the music, because when he sat down, he started, "You guys sing to my music." I thought he was going to say, "That's gone."
Yeah.
That would have gotten the people, and then like you liked it when you liked it when I do with the RKO. Yep. I'm not doing the RKO anymore. Now I'm doing, Okada's money clip.
It's when MJF shoves a table back under the ring when fans are chanting, "We want tables."
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. And what was another example? I was just thinking of it, and then I thought of MJF. There's other examples of that where even Swerve Strickland, after he turned heel, the first thing he did is came to ringside and he goes, "Did you miss me, sickos?" You're going for boos, and you just said a line that's clearly going to get you a crowd pop. It was a mistake. I was really hard on him for that, because it's not, not just to pick on him. It's so many people, and it's like the whole Seth Rollins thing. You go for the communal reaction and you think you're over. And I text with people in different wrestling companies, and they're just like, yeah, they're even some people in positions of power, they think they've had a successful night if they get crowd chants and pops, as opposed to stepping back and going, are those crowd chants part of a story that's going to help sell tickets and get people over? So it's not just Swerve, but since then he changed. His music's different, his cadence different. He talks slower. He's not using catchphrases. Trick Williams is funny and entertaining, but people aren't booing him. Jade was entertaining as a result of you sincerely wanting to see her lose and be put, just be knocked down a peg off her pedestal. And to me, that's like, Danhausen can be funny backstage and entertaining in and of itself. Baby faces can be entertaining with being witty at the expense of heels, but heels should not be entertaining in a way where you're popping for them at any stage of their act. And I would eliminate some things that are going well, like the Seth example with the communal singing. I would sacrifice that for the greater purpose of getting heels booed. And it would have been great if Orton did what you said, Javier. And I'm done with it. It was fun. No more. In fact, just no more RKOs except to put down your favorite opponents. I'm not gonna. Yeah. And Mayface says it's up to WWE to get the fans to boo heels and give the fans no choice. Yes. Derek Hubbard says it might not be a popular opinion, but shows that analyze the product on this level has changed the reaction of the loudest fans at the arena. They are a minority, but they lead the sheep. I'd like him to elaborate on that a little bit in terms of, it's a term I've used for a while, but it's been so long now, I'm not recalling it. What did I say? Bellwether fans. That, there are fans who go to a building and they set the tone, and then there'll be fans who are followers. Who, I've seen them. I've been at many wrestling shows over the years, probably hundreds, where part of my experience is just watching how fans react to things. And you see fans looking around at a reaction that's different than what they do when they're sitting at the couch at home. And they kind of look up to them. They go, "Oh, I'm going to do what they're doing," because they're changing, they're kind of recalibrating the way that I'm reacting to it. And they are, it seems like a derogatory term, but cheap. They will be led by the bellwether fans who are kind of indicating to everybody else they're leading the way. Or in the case of, the technical term of bellwether is there's a fan reaction that's portending something that's manifesting that hasn't fully developed yet. And I guess in some ways they're two separate things, but it's the same group that I think Derek Hubbard is talking about.
Yeah.
And Javier, can I pause you 1 second? I found he did follow up. Let me just read Derek's follow up. It becomes difficult to take the analysis hat off and put the fan hat back on when you watch or attend a show. I want to cheer for a good performance, even if they're doing dastardly acts. And I think that plays into Sadler Version 3's comment, which is fans, and I've made this case, that the fans who listen to shows like this should understand that the biggest compliment you can pay a heel is not cheering them, but booing them. You are undercut. And the good heels, for sure, some bad heels, they want to be cheered. But they don't understand the business in the way that I think top guys do. But the biggest compliment you can give is to boo and not say one more time, or we want tables, but react emotionally. That's the way you pay the biggest compliment to the wrestlers who are doing their job. And so I think what Derek's saying, Javier, you can have an analyst's hat and still boo the heel and get wrapped up in the moment, because that's the best way to enjoy the show. And you also deep down understand that's the biggest compliment you can. That's the biggest showing of respect you can to a heel, is to boo them if you really respect what they're doing.
Yeah.
I know I cut you off, but I saw Derek.
But that kind of covered most of the stuff I was going to say.
Fair enough. Okay. You can go away then. I'll just keep anticipating what you're going to say. Derek Mitchell says fans have injected themselves as a character on the shows, and it becomes tiresome most of the time watching. But it's up to promoters and bookers to change that. Rude Dog chimes in here. Welcome, Rude Dog. Randy Orton should change his finishing maneuver from the RKO to the resting headlock. Honestly, there are babyface finishers that if you want to be a heel, you should change. I know it's a joke, and I wouldn't go that far, but and Sadler Version 3 goes, that is another thing. If Orton's going heel, he should change his music. Piled River Pete says, give Javier the book. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on this topic before we for sure move on. Derek says Jelly Roll was more sincere with Randy Orton than his Grammy acceptance speech. Let's see. Almost through here. Maybe the new Batty Crew. Yeah, we'll get a little bit to that. Here it is. I agree. I thought the fans' fault was coming after Orton mentioned the love that he was getting from them. So, fortunately, that did not happen. When Seth turned heel, he kept his song. Moface says, when Seth turned heel, he kept his song and chant, and it seems WWE doesn't care if heels are booed. And let's see, one more. Door at 11 steps. Okay. Says, cheap shotting a future opponent is an act of sheer cowardice. The announcer should be emphasizing that such behavior is immature and below an athlete of Orton's caliber. Yeah, you can't start now. You can start any time, but you can't expect it to work the first time you do it. But it's a good habit to start, and across the board, announcers should be doing that. Not in a way that feels manipulative. It just matches the culture of the presentation of the product consistently, and then it doesn't seem manipulative if they do it. So anyway, I'll. By the way, do you have a theory on who Randy's talking to? Nick Barbatti had a whole list of people, who it could be. I know somebody in the chat had thought it mentioned Randy's wife, maybe, or something like that. But yeah, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mentioned a few times Randy's wife, because that kind of seems like what might end up being. That's pretty much the only person I can think of, really.
Bob Orton Jr.
I was about to say that. Is Dad still with us? I'm not.
There's, I think there's been some silly theories out there too, but not. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe there's someone. It's going to be a surprise that will make sense, but isn't on the top 3 or 4 list of what we're hearing.
Chris Jericho.
Seriously, yeah, that could be kind of fun. Yeah. What do you think of Jade getting baddies? She had them in AEW. Did they tell that story well? Started well.
I actually watched what I could watch of last week's SmackDown before watching this.
Yeah.
And there is a scene where I don't know what the scene was, but in the background Jade was talking to BFAB, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that it was a setup where BFAB was going to start feuding with Michin. But no, it apparently was to set up them getting together for this. So I thought that works well. I think it does help take some of the weight off of Jade's shoulder to have two heaters with her. So I like the idea.
Did you like? I've complimented it, but did you like Jade and Rhea? What did you like, and what did you not like about that segment?
Yeah, no, I liked it. The only thing I didn't like is I think it went a little bit too long. They kind of repeated some of the stuff they were saying. They just changed the words to it, something like I sometimes do on here. But yeah, it is. I thought overall it was fine. It wasn't as great as the first one. The first one was like an A+. This is like a B+ or an A-. You know.
Yeah, I think what people are going to remember is Jade thinks she's a star with or without the title, and she's just here for the money. She's using WWE for her own gain instead of WWE as the ends, and being the best wrestler should be the ends to the means. And she has taken that away for Rhea. Rhea did say the title needs me, and I mean and she's done that before. But I think what I liked about this segment is I think you end with, I don't want someone who has a title simply as a way to get rich, and she thinks she's above it, and I think that is a really good heel face. It's a motivation to cheer the face and boo the heel.
Well, and what I really liked about this segment is that they set up a goal, and because the goal of the segment is to get Jade over in her character, because the only stuff that Rhea Ripley really talked about was just to juxtapose be the juxtaposition to Jade's character, so to frame Jade's character as opposed to her like really fighting back in anything that she said. So this was completely an attempt to uplift Jade. So I thought it was effective for that.
Derek Mitchell with a super chat. Thank you, Derek, as always, for super chats. He says, I called it months ago, even before Jade and BFAB were seen talking backstage last week on SmackDown. BFAB would join Jade, but I didn't think Michin would also join. So more the merrier. And Derek says, Jade and BFAB were seen last week talking backstage during the Candice LeRae Johnny Gargano segment. Yep. Cool. Again, thank you, Derek. Appreciate that. I'm trying to get that. Okay, so Drew McIntyre, Jacob Fatu, crashed windshield, beat him on the hood, bloody him, and then later Jacob interrupts the segment, attacks him, more pull aparts. Forever, producers, referees, security guys are all going to let their guard down too soon, and then people are going to break away from being restrained. That's a bit of a trope. But learn a lesson from that, kids. Don't let your guard down. Just stay until everyone's out of the room. But what I think stood out is Drew brought Nick Aldis' son into it and said, your son should be ashamed of having a dad like you. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean they're having a match, but if you are building to a match, that is a step you take to pull Nick Aldis out of the suit, out of the corporate position. And last week, Nick Aldis had said, Randy, that's disrespecting me. You know where I come from. You know my background. Don't talk to me that way. It was his way of saying, there's a code here, and I am an ex-wrestler. I've taken bumps. I've put on the tights. I've won titles. I've been in main events. You can disrespect others in that way, but you can't say that to me without ramifications. You're taking it to a level that's outside the bounds of kind of like I say about hockey fights. There's a certain parameters, and then you don't go outside of them. So it does seem like we're going to get a Drew Nick Aldis match. Maybe not at WrestleMania, maybe at WrestleMania, because they already are spending some of the Fatu Drew stuff, although they didn't give away the full-fledged match. So, we could just get Drew and Fatu in a Hell in a Cell or something at WrestleMania, and the Aldis matches at Backlash. Javier, your take on all that?
Yeah, if there is not a match, I'm going to be disappointed. Because they've done such a. I'm more excited for Nick Aldis versus Drew McIntyre than I am with against Jacob Fatu. And I'm actually interested in that too, because this crazy, because this was a fun, just crazy fight, and I just want to see them beat each other up. So, and you mentioned Hell in a Cell. I was thinking Hell in a Cell would make sense because that's where Jacob helped, accidentally helped Drew beat Cody. So that would make sense, and they might want to get something to heat up more WrestleMania. And yeah, I personally, like, I'd like to see like maybe Jacob Fatu get injured, not in real life, storyline injured, when before, and then Nick Aldis be the one to be the one have to go after. I mean maybe you could even follow up with the because they haven't really touched on who the mystery attacker for Jacob was. Maybe Jacob's taken out again by a mystery attacker. So you see further that storyline, and then Nick Aldis blames Drew, and then that sets up their match in WrestleMania. So, and then you later on you continue with Jacob Fatu later, because I think it'd be nicer to see it at WrestleMania than at Backlash.
Here it is. Derek Mitchell says Jacob Fatu and Drew needed to be playing Benny Hill music while they're fighting all over the arena.
Yakety Sax is the name of the song.
That's the Benny Hill theme. No one will ever know. Thank you for knowing that, but some things just have to be called what everyone knows.
I mean, if someone wants to look it up on Spotify or something,
Well, that's true. Yeah. Well, you got to take the middle step in Google. What is the actual formal name of the Benny Hill theme? Okay. It's like the Miami Vice theme. It's like, what is the Miami Vice theme? You look it up, then you can find it on Spotify. Real Legend says Danhausen just took Johnny Gargano's $20 and did nothing. LOL. I love his line, and they're so sneaky funny. Like, he's sneaky funny, and he's like, "Do you have $20 human dollars?" Like, that's what she asked Candice LeRae. Like, as opposed to what? Like, what did he think she might have that wasn't dollars that humans use? And to put it in, I'm like, maybe there's some backstory there that I don't know, where like Candice LeRae tried to use cat money or I don't know, barn money. Like, it's human money. I don't know. But it just cracks me up. He
C dollars.
So, Powder for Pete says, Danhausen segments have been a hit for me every time. And
he's only for a little bit too, because a little bit goes a long way.
I was literally just saying that, about to say it. I'm glad you did too. I'm with you. It's that little. There's restraint, and I know it's weird, but I'm going to use that as evidence for Randy turning on Cody last week. If they showed similar restraint in the main event segments that they have shown for Danhausen, which is small doses, get in, get out, do your thing. I mean, why can't they have the maturity of restraint there with main event segments that they do with Danhausen? Because they know they could throw Danhausen in 6 segments and have him tell 6 jokes and only 2 of them land, but they don't. They know better, or Danhausen knows better. Sadler says, Danhausen is finally winning me over. And by the way, going back to the last topic, Derek Mitchell says, it was always Benny Hill to me. I didn't know it had a name. Let's see. You brought up Sami Zayn earlier. Anything you want to add to the story with him and Trick? Some people in the chat were saying maybe there's a double turn at some point with them.
That's kind of what it seems like to me. One of the ironic things is, because they haven't been hit, they didn't hit when Trick beat Jacob Fatu. They didn't really hit like, this doesn't really count. And then in comes Trick and tells him, "Oh, you thought that I couldn't win, and here I am beating the unbeatable Jacob Fatu."
Yeah.
And I'm like, and he's obviously using it for heel heat because he beat him because of distraction or whatever, and with Drew McIntyre, so like but because they're not emphasizing that that's not the way that you win, you lose some of that. All he got out of it was Sami Zayn giving him the side eye, saying, really? And that's about it.
Yeah.
So like it run, you could get more heat by saying, by emphasizing that.
Yeah. Okay. We had a title change. R-Truth and Damian Priest. Upsetting? Solo Sikoa and JC Mateo. I don't know. 9 minutes, a little bit of chaos leading to it with the MFTs coming out after the Wyatt Six coming out and the MFTs charging at them, and it led to some chaos that led to the finish, and then Solo snapped later at his guys in a way that felt a little unfair, and I think they took note of it. What do you think of R-Truth and Priest as a team, the decision to give them the tag belts this week, and also the direction of Solo? A three-parter there for you.
All right, so with first I loved how when it was the show was opening, R-Truth was in the barber chair and they were cutting hair that wasn't there. That was great.
And Priest played that well, by the way. Like,
yeah,
what's happening here? Never mind. it's just whatever.
They've got chemistry, Priest, and I like
do.
that. You know, the two of them have chemistry, and Priest is not making an ass out of himself, so that's also a positive. So he's the straight man to Truth's thing.
Yep.
And yeah, I've really it works. I mean, if Priest is not going to be doing anything after spending all the time he was as a champion and in the champion hunt, if you're not going to do anything, this is a nice side project for him to do. Keeps him on TV, and you get to see more of a light version of it. A more light version, and not I'm going to destroy Aleister Black in a ambulance match kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it works for me. The team up, the Solo thing. I don't know. I think I like Solo. So I like Solo Sikoa. I think that there's a use for him, and I think that this has been not the best. The whole thing with the lantern and stuff. It's just been I mean. Because you guys on the fix mentioned the urn and the Undertaker. That had stakes though. If you're a kid, particularly because the urn was like the source of the Undertaker's power, so there was like something to the urn. But to this, it's it's something about the. They're implying it has powers now.
And it has it's the soul of Bray, or it represents, the memory of Bray, however you want to look at it.
So I get that.
But they don't talk about that explicitly.
Yeah. And I get that aspect of it. And they're like, they tease it a little bit. And Tama Tonga said, get rid of this. You haven't been the same since you've had it. And there have been moments where Solo seemed a little bit more possessed by the lantern, like something's going on with them. So that's kind of up my alley. So I kind of dug that part of it. But it's being done more in a wink kind of version. So I'm getting more vibes of when Tama Tonga and Taichi were feuding over Iska's metal fingers that were apparently like contained his soul or something. In New Japan, that ended up in a ladder match for the fingers, and that's kind of the vibe I'm getting for this, because it's not really meant to be taken seriously for the most part. But if it creates drama between Solo and Tama. Plus, you had Shinsuke saying, "What are you doing with Solo?" They reference that you're acting like Roman Reigns. That was meant to be the "ooh" line. Mm-hmm. So,
and I got it.
Yeah. So I'm like, it feels like the storyline finally has a pulse, which is what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
Let's see where it goes, and and Solo is a good actor. He's able to change his character enough, around enough to where he could play different roles. So I like that. I mean, I'm not talking about actor like Oscars worthy, but on that level, like a character actor. So
yeah, I think with Solo, like, he's a good actor, but he doesn't have the gravitas of like a villain with a level of a main event level threat. Like, so to be the leader of a faction in the tag division is fine. And he does, he can play, we've seen him play some humor, but it doesn't suit the character to do that. And I don't know. I think they're still they're still trying to figure out how to get the most out of him. And I think they've got him kind of slotted roughly the right way. But being a good actor but lacking gravitas limits how much TV time or the level of angle you should be in. But really, it's unfair for him to be against the Wyatt Six when the Wyatt Six are just so poorly developed as a faction. You know, they should have given us something more defining about the support group than they have. I mean, they're just doing cliched little things. We don't know anything about Dexter Loomis or, I don't know. It's frustrating that if they put just a little bit more consistently into it, we'd be in a better place. It would help Solo in his MFTs to be against the Wyatt Six if we knew more about Joe Gacy relative to Dexter Loomis, and relative to the dynamic with Uncle Howdy. And it just feels like they're just kind of going through the motions and pretending to be this group or being performative instead of genuine.
Yeah, and the other thing that's really annoying is the fact they end up getting their hand the Wyatts end up getting their hands on the lantern, and then they don't protect it and lose it immediately. It feels like really low rent, low effort. Like bad kids TV.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
That's like the issue. But like I said, the thing with getting Shinsuke and Tama involved, and I love Tama, so
yep.
I
know
think
that could go somewhere good, and he might have more than Solo ultimately.
And I'll tell you what, like if they break up the MFTs, I would love to see Solo team up with Evil.
Oh yeah, because he's coming in. Yep. Yeah, interesting. Yep. All right, we have a super chat, which, by the way, in full disclosure, I normally ignore because it's not related to our post-show format. But we make exceptions for super chats. I don't want to get too out of hand. Gold Standard says, Wade, do you think if an Hangman Adam Page went to WWE and worked in NXT for a couple of years and learned to unlearn the indie garbage, he could be a star in WWE? I think he could come to the main roster and not unlearn anything and be a star, because I don't think he has to be unlearned. I just think he needs to be curated, steered, edited. But I don't think it's this huge overhaul. I think all you would need is just the maturity to say, maybe being at level 10 and vowing to kill people and maim people in grotesquely in intricately describing the grotesque ways you're going to do it is a little much, and there's nowhere to go after that. So let's reserve that to once every 3 years, as opposed to 3 out of 4 weeks. Then you're done. Then you got it. That's it. Everything else about him's great. Like, I think he has the range as earnest, likable, cool, authentic babyface who you want to cheer. I think he's turnkey, just with that one exception. Everything else is scripted enough and bullet pointed and gone through enough. He's not going to freestyle his way out of the realm of the structure of how WWE tells their stories. And there are good things about the way WWE does things most of the time that just sort of go unnoticed, which is don't talk about a lot of shoulder content and assume knowledge, and talk about things that is canon and part of our world, so that we don't leave people out of it. But that's not even a big thing with Hangman. What do you think, Javier?
Yeah, I agree with what you said.
Cool.
Can't really add more than that. It's
just spend 2 minutes repeating what I said with different words. Sadler version 3 says
director. He directed. He needs a little bit better direction. That's about it.
Yep. Hangman has an obsession with garbage death matches, says Sadler version 3. The last 2 were just overtly absurd. Gold Standard says, thanks, Wade. No, thank you. Seriously, super chats are a wonderful way to support what we do, and appreciate it. And I get to show that I will prioritize them. Paulo Repeat says, Evil in NXT. Can't wait to see. I've only heard him through podcasts. I've never seen him. Yeah. Tama needs to stay off social media after today's news. I was out. I didn't see it.
He posted behind the scenes stuff, and apparently that's a big no-no, despite them having Unreal there. But
well, Unreal, people at the top should decide what makes Unreal, not a wrestler.
Yeah. I'm just being an ass about it, but yeah.
Let's see what Derek says. AEW's done a good job developing Hangman Page. Just go back to his ROH days and see how much he has grown. And I think he'd be a star in WWE. Yeah. Who came up with a syringe in the mouth? Yeah. Anyway, Sadler version 3 says Evil is mid at best, Javier. Well, so is a tag team is mid in WWE. There's nothing wrong with that.
he is, yeah, but like he does have personality and he does have a charisma about him and he has a look.
Mhm.
I'm not expecting him to be, the top, level guy, which is why I said I would like to see him paired up with Solo Sikoa,
Yep.
like on a low level tier. So
Yep. Saying he's mid means, Javier, you've got him slotted right. If he's
yeah.
in the current tag division.
I mean, and he's a good wrestler. It's just that it's for not he was never at the level as your Tanahashi's and stuff and
Right.
and Kenny Omega's and stuff.
Yeah.
He was like at he was on a decent level. Is just that the House of Torture stuff was it people forgot that he's a decent, pretty good wrestler.
It was a controversial decision to have him win that WGP title, and for a variety of reasons. But like you're saying, people forgot that he could be good enough to be passable in that spot, but it was also a reflection of burning out or running out of other options at that spot at a time when New Japan was going through some struggles that would, continue for a while.
Yeah, for quite a while. He's kind of like a Sonata, where like he could challenge every now and then for the title. He just wouldn't have won it under normal circumstances.
Yeah. Do you agree with Sadler? I'm shocked WWE signed him. Doesn't seem like a WWE guy at all.
His wife is there. That's one thing. So, assuming they're still together, because I don't follow that kind of news that much.
Mm-hmm.
So that you have that, and he'll just kind of be a body like on a mid card level. So that's pretty much what I'm expecting.
Yeah. And are you into the Motor City Machine Guns drama with Johnny Gargano and the story they're telling there with Sabin? Maybe warming up to Candice LeRae after Alex Shelley's been preoccupied with Johnny Gargano since she helped them win. I don't know where it's going.
I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued. It puts Motor City Machine Guns more on my TV. They have one of the best theme songs. As long as it doesn't lead to their breakup, that's hopefully. But yeah. I mean, I and good on Alex Shelley's like selling the what just went on there, and I like them. I like what they've been doing.
All right. What else haven't we covered on this show? Oh, Carmelo and Ilya, U.S. title match. Interesting choice to have Dragunov have this whole reason he needs to win matches before, and then boom, he's just like out of nowhere, just go. Well, I realize now, it's in front of me. I need to take it. I haven't had a chance to really digest it. Process. How does this make sense? Javier, your body language suggests you don't either.
I have no clue. I mean, I was already thrown off from the last week's one where he's talking about because it seems like there's this whole entire awesome drama that only exists inside Ilya's head, going on, and we've only got like bits and pieces of it slipping out. So
which in a way is very in character for him. It's very, it's a feature, not a flaw to a degree, because he does seem like he has a lot of inner dialogue.
It's like I'm expecting there to be like a new TV show of Ilya's life outside of WWE and what's going on there, But yeah, I mean, and it was weird because the entire match felt like it was taking place in a different universe than what we've been saying, because there were a lot of distraction finishes and interference finishes and BS finishes and just and sloppy-ish matches and then all of a sudden you have this chunk of awesome wrestling right there.
Yeah.
So it just felt like a different world altogether.
Yeah.
And
was this just a reaction to last week's criticism that SmackDown didn't have any good wrestling? And if you want us to watch 3 hours of SmackDown, you need to give us at least one standout match. And they just looked and said, I guess we got to just abandon the Dragunov delayed gratification storyline and just give people what they want because we don't have another option.
Yeah, I mean, they generally have been having one really good match, and it's usually the Carmelo match,
yeah. or Ilya before that, yeah.
Yeah, and Ilya before that. I'm assuming last week they probably just didn't have anybody.
It was more happenstance, but still, they had people were. I mean, I know we have columnists of the Torch pointed out, and the Shadows pointed out that people who sometimes I just I'm focused on. I'm going to watch it. It's my job to analyze it, but there's people at home who tune in Friday because they want to see a couple good matches, and that's not an option to not have it and not feel like their time wasn't well spent. I mean, like, I think if you're WWE, you should be cognizant of that. It's not just about forwarding storylines to sell tickets for WrestleMania. You need to make people feel their 3 hours was well spent. That includes good wrestling. Yeah.
I mean, and like 2 really, 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 really decent matches, or like 1 great match at least, at the very least. And sure enough, I mean, like, I kind of wish that they would just, occasionally use other wrestlers too, other than Carmelo. But
right, I know, yeah.
Because
I mean, Fraxium and Most of the Machine Guns had a good match. There is talent there, and that was part of the U.S. Title Open Challenge. Was you got Carmelo or Ilya as a defending champ, and then you just have all these tag wrestlers who can come in. Champ and Gargano had their turn. You can, have good wrestling that isn't part of the main storyline, and I think that's something people liked and kind of frankly miss.
Yeah, and because I think, like, what was it, 2 weeks ago was the Turmoil. There were a couple of good matches there. I'm glad they're pushing Los Garzas too. So
yeah. Yes. Any additional thoughts on Jelly Roll as it relates to the Kit Wilson segment, or Kit Wilson being involved with him?
Let me remember. No, pretty much went the way I expected it to go. I love the pearls around Kit, the massive pearls that Wilson's wearing. Pretty much went the way what I expected, and now we'll get a match next week, which probably something happens, set up something for WrestleMania.
Yeah, I think Kit has taken his character beyond just, like Danhausen's doing You're Cursed, and that works. But he's I think, moved it away from what felt kind of icky, which is there's this political agenda to mock people who are rightfully mocking the manosphere, the bro culture. What's the term for the trad wives? Like, they were, it felt like it was his character was created to make people who feel like that's silly and worthy of mocking to be sissies or effeminate or not manly in a way that felt agenda based. And so as entertaining as he was, it was kind of creepy that it just felt like there were people in the back who were like, yeah, we want our traditional wives and whatever, men should live in just all the nonsense about bro culture that's taken over spheres of social media and YouTube and stuff. It's lost some of that in a good way. Like, it shed some of that, I guess I should say. But I think they know they're onto something with Kit being entertaining, and in a very different way than Trick Williams. I just think he's going to have to turn that what it should have been all along, which is a babyface act, because that ring entrance and his wit and his demeanor and personality, I think people want to cheer that. Javier.
Yeah, I had mentioned that the gimmick he was doing was similar to the one that RVD and his then fiance were doing, because they were doing something similar along those lines, and I thought they were doing it better. And it's kind of fallen more to that level. Yeah, or move to that level, not fallen. Yeah.
Derek wants me to remind people I will take segments of our post show, especially if you don't have time to listen to or watch the whole thing, and we turn them into shorts. They're like 45 seconds to 2 minutes of single topic, quick sound bites. And if you have time to watch those, I encourage you to do it. It's on the PWTorch YouTube channel. You please, if you're watching us, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Even if you go, I don't care about subscriptions, it doesn't affect what I watch. It just helps the algorithm. And if you appreciate us and our brand and what we do, it's a super easy thing you can do to help us. If you watch YouTube, everyone says that. I don't say it very much. I'm being told to say it more, so I'll try to do that. The really big call to action that I had earlier in the week is when you see one of our shorts go up, like it right away. There's a 10-minute window where you can end up with 17 views, 350 views, 1,000 views, and we're trying to get it to that 20 or 30,000 view thing. But the algorithm just stops recommending it if people watch it and they don't watch to the end, and they don't like it, and they don't comment. And the way to get that started is you guys. If you like it and you comment, the algorithm clicks in and says people are engaged with this. And you might think, well, what does like do? It actually matters if everybody does it. So when it first goes up, if you set the bell to go off when we post anything new on the YouTube channel, and you set your phone to give you an alert, go in and just push play on the video and like it. unless you dislike it, then don't. I'm not asking you to do it, but I think you'll like it. Go to the trouble if you watch them and like them. And if we can kind of get an army together and build momentum on that, it can help us kind of get to the next level and bring new people into the fold, which of course, we want more attendance, not less, to what we do. And that is just a way for you to help out in that way. That's a call to action. Like the YouTube videos, ideally the shorts as soon as they come out within like 10 minutes, or else they just fall off the algorithm of being recommended in people's feeds. So try to do that. We put them up late at night after the show, but we also put them up scattered throughout the afternoon and evening on the day after. So thank you for that. Mark Biscetti says, yep, I'll help make the algorithm work. The Torch needs a bigger YouTube presence. Thank you for that. And just going back to the last topic, Real Legend says, I love the Kit Wilson Jelly Roll poetry off, slam poetry, LOL. There's some good stuff in there from Kit Wilson. It could have been, I was thinking it was going to be cringy, and it just turned out not to be all that cringy.
His stuff was pretty good.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of times it's stuff like that falls flat, and this did not. And that's the thing. Kit's got talent. Let's curate that character in a way that makes more sense. To what I was saying, Pau the Repeat said there definitely was an agenda with the creation of Kit, but it backfired. Yeah, I agree. Pau the Repeat says Kit got a good response from the live crowd. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to bring up, Javier, before we sign off here and chat? Last chance to throw something at us if you think we missed a comment earlier, or
there
you
was
want something add.
There was a weird line during the it was during the tag team title where Joe Tessitore said that the MFTs have been in an angle with the Wyatt Six for months. So
I didn't
like
catch that. Oh wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, wait a minute. Is angle also used in another form that's not like carny language or wrestling language? So yeah,
I don't think so.
That slipped. I wonder if that slipped because they've been in an angle. I found that weird.
You wonder if Joe just doesn't know enough to know that, because he's really taken a crash course in this world.
Yeah, I mean, maybe because if he said feud, I could get that, right? Because they've been in a feud. That works. Yeah. But I've never heard like angle used in any other way other than that. So
yeah, that's weird.
That's just kind of weird. And I like the Irresistible Force promo that they did to hype up their match. So it was under control situation, and you got the two women got to Nia Jax and Last Legend. Got to see, so I like that. So,
I'm glad you brought that up, because we didn't. I mean, we should have covered that more. It was just sort of there near the end of the show before the Orton thing, and it got lost a little bit in my mindset. But and then they announced that there will be the Bellas against Charlotte and Bliss next week. So they're just continuing to tell that story. I mean, the DQ finish, did it bother you for given the stakes?
I knew what happened the week before, so I knew what was going to happen this week. Yeah. My complaint, one of the complaints about the episode is the fact that everything felt like you knew what was going to happen. If you watch wrestling enough, everything was like scripted. If you saw last week, you know what was going to happen this week. I could tell you what's going to happen next week. So spoiler alert, when they have their match, Lash Legend and Nia Jax are going to interfere in the match. Then whoever the general manager is going to come out, get angry, and say, "Okay, it's going to be a triple threat." Or whatever. So that's what's going to happen.
Yep. Spoiler alert, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's kind of how it works. And I mean, that was the other frustrating was I think there were 3 screwy finishes in this one. Yeah, I think. So,
and I mean, every decision that you can rationalize or justify in isolation also needs to be evaluated in the context of what you're doing elsewhere on the show, and really elsewhere all month and elsewhere all year. So, all right, very good. If you are not a VIP member, just encourage you to do so. There's VIP membership available, a bunch of different ways to sign up through Patreon, which links up with Spotify, by the way, directly with your Apple native podcast app. You can use your Apple account to unlock the VIP shows and the commercial-free versions of our free shows like this one. You get a full VIP membership with our website, our ad-free website, and full access to nearly 4 decades of archives, customizable podcast feed, compatible with Apple Podcasts native app with no password or any kind of advanced settings. It's a really slick system. PWTorch.com/GoVIP, PWTorch.com/GoVIP. If you go the Patreon route, search PWTorch and Patreon, or go to patreon.com/PWTorchVIP and get a 7-day free trial. Unlock all our VIP shows and see what it's like to hear this show without commercial breaks. So if you're not a VIP member, we encourage you, implore you, ask of you to support us with a VIP membership. Javier, thanks so much. Always really look forward to our discussions.
Thanks for having me, Wade.
You bet. Thanks, everybody. And on the YouTube side of things, we'll throw up some closing comments, closing credits, so to speak, from our chat as we sign off. So thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you Monday night after Raw.